welcome to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me today is Court Winsett.
I'm Court Winsett.
Oh, hello. And Cameron Spann.
Nom, 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 nom.
Are y'all hungry?
Oh, yeah.
I am hungry. And you know what one of my favorite foods is?
What?
Honestly, sandwiches.
Sandwiches?
I love sandwiches.
Is this going to be like a Bubba Gump episode? You're going to talk about all the different ways you love a sandwich?
Boiled shrimp.
But see, are you a hot sandwich or a cold sandwich?
Okay. I know I am in the minority. I know it, but I like cold sandwiches. I like a good Italian sub.
I mean, I like cold sandwiches. I don't think you're stating anything particularly controversial by saying that you like cold sandwiches. You prefer cold sandwiches over hot?
I don't dislike hot sandwiches, but like Jersey Mike's, I will always prefer like the big Italian sub with the juices on it, you know?
Specifically, when you mention Jersey Mike's, I'm going to go with the...
I've had their hot subs. They're fine.
The buffalo chicken sub every single time. The buffalo chicken Philly.
So then you're you're a Jimmy John's person then, because Jimmy John's is nothing but cold.
But what's weird, see, I'm an anomaly here. If I go to Subway, which is rare, it's got to be toasted. I want the melted cheese. But specifically like Jersey and Jimmy, I want it cold.
Now, when
I'm a hot sandwich.
Katie and I went to Philadelphia, and that was really the first place where I had a legit buffalo chicken Philly sandwich that was like in Philly. And so my mouth is watery just talking about it. It was so delicious. The only place that I've been able to get something that was specifically buffalo and chicken and Phillyized down here is at Jersey Mike's. They have, and it's nothing like what I was able to get in Philly, but it's the closest thing to it.
I know we have to get to the show, but I guess it depends on the sandwich. If I'm getting like a chicken sandwich, like a bacon chicken ranch, it's going to be toasted.
Yeah.
Like, it just depends.
Yeah.
I'm always a hot sandwich.
I'm always a hot mess. So, you know.
No, which I mean works out because obviously a lot of complaints that people have, which is a fairly newer thing, is when you're pregnant, you're not allowed to have deli meat.
Right.
But you can have it if it's heated, toasted, things like that. So all these people are like, oh, I miss having my, cold cut sub. And I'm like, I don't miss that because I didn't like it beforehand.
When did they tell pregnant people they couldn't have deli meat?
Oh,
it's been that way.
Yeah.
Really?
All of Abby's pregnancies, it was like, do not do deli meat.
Man.
Is it listeria? What are they?
Listeria. Yeah.
Y'all's generation just got screwed on that because I'm pretty sure that wasn't a thing back from.
Well, it's. I mean,
no sushi.
Yeah, no sushi.
Well, no sushi's been around for.
Dairy has to be pasteurized.
Yeah, you can't have any unpasteurized cheese, which then somebody tried to tell me you can't have queso. And I'm like, I trust that my little Mexican restaurant I go to, they are not serving unpasteurized queso.
This episode's not about food, believe it or not.
No, it's not. But
it's about you, Court.
Generation.
It's you.
This is your episode.
I have spent enough time complaining about the fact that nobody ever brings up my generation that y'all have finally done an episode that just talks about me.
The grumpy Gen Xers.
Yeah. So this is how the sandwich generation, so there's where we get the sandwich part from, how the sandwich generation can protect their retirement. So
I don't like the fact that people are calling us the sandwich generation, but I guess we'll get to why we're called the sandwich generation in a second. But let's roll with the sandwiches for a minute because our list this particular episode is going to be famous sandwiches in pop culture.
It couldn't be more perfect.
I'm still drooling over here from all our talk about sandwiches. But,
okay, so the first one on the list, the Krabby Patty.
Money.
Oh, yeah.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes.
Oh, boy, the next one, Court. It's all you.
Take it.
Yes, it is. The Moist Maker. I can't remember for sure if that was actually the name of Ross's sandwich on Friends or if it was just that was his favorite sandwich because it had the Moist Maker in it. But anyway, it was his beloved Thanksgiving leftover sandwich with a crucial gravy-soaked middle slice, which was, as he called it, the Moist Maker.
Wet bread.
It sounds a lot like in New Orleans, you can get a sandwich with debris on it, which is like the gravy and like it's the little bit of leftover kind of beef in there. Oh, it's so good. But it is a soggy sandwich. You have to eat it right then. It is not good leftover.
Yeah, that's right. It's like any French dip that you dip in au jus. It's going to be wet.
Oh,
yeah.
All right, next on the list is the Luther Burger from The Boondocks, which I know is an animated show. I've never watched it.
I've not ever watched it.
This burger is served between two Krispy Kreme donuts named after Luther Vandross.
Oh, man, it sounds good. Of course, I think we've already established that I'm a little hungry today.
Patty's Pub Grilled Charlie. So it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a ridiculous sandwich made with peanut butter on the outside.
No.
That sounds messy, but it's very Charlie. Have y'all seen that show?
Yeah.
I've only seen one episode, but
it's funny.
It does have some funny guys in it, I know.
Yeah.
Next is Katz's Deli Pastrami. sandwich when Harry Met Sally, the famous "I'll have what she's having" scene.
Which they redid that for a commercial
they did that
recently.
For the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They sure did. Where did we eat pastrami when we went to New York last year? Do y'all remember? It was at Corner Diner.
It
wasn't
Corner.
Katz's, but
it was Carnegie Deli, the
Yes.
remake. It
Yes.
wasn't the original Carnegie Deli, but it was a Carnegie
it was
Deli.
delicious.
Yeah, I mean, that's a staple in New York.
The Big Kahuna Burger from Pulp Fiction.
Nice.
A fictional Hawaiian-themed fast food burger made famous by Samuel L. effing Jackson.
Yes, sir. And then finally, Katie.
Elvis, peanut butter, banana, and bacon. See, I didn't know the bacon part.
Yeah, I always heard it was just
It's
a
just peanut butter and banana
sandwich. Yeah.
Before an event last year, September, that was downtown, me, Nicole, and David went to the arcade diner, and we got the sandwich. And it's toasted and warm, and it is so good. The peanut butter is like melty. The bacon is crispy. Ooh.
Oh, peanut butter is like, I'm a big peanut butter fan
Me
anyways.
too.
And Mugshots has a burger that has peanut butter on it, and it's good.
It's so good.
So good. But it's like melty peanut butter.
And you can choose crunchy or smooth.
Yeah, which, okay, never mind. We're going to go on. We're going on way too many food
This is a food episode.
Gen X
This is not
called...
about porn. It's about our food.
Supposedly, we're now called the sandwich generation. Today is the day that I learned that I'm apparently part of the sandwich generation. But why are we called the sandwich generation? So it's because we're sandwiched. Oh, look at that. We're sandwiched between millennials and baby boomers, the two groups that dominate media coverage because y'all are all about yourselves. Boomers and millennials, y'all take up all the space and we're just sandwiched in between you. But I would like to think that we got out of that sandwich a long time ago and we're off in the woods somewhere drinking from a garden hose and just being our own angry little selves without having to be sandwiched between the two of y'all. We'll let you eliminate each other and then we'll come back and pick up the pieces afterwards.
Court, question.
Yes.
What is the best part of an Oreo? Don't make it difficult. What's the best part of an Oreo? It's not the lame cookie parts. It's the cream in the middle.
I don't have a favorite part of the Oreo.
It's the cream in the middle. And so you're the best part of the sandwich.
I eat an Oreo all in one. I take a bite of the whole Oreo.
Yeah, I
You
do
never
too.
peel off the cream ring and eat it sometimes?
No.
Well, I apparently almost got divorced because I said there was no point to have double stuffed Oreos. Just give me an original.
I'm kind of an original Oreos kind of fan.
So will y'all be fine without any cream? You just like the actual
No.
cookie wafer?
No, you still have to have the cream.
But it's one cookie. That's like saying which is the best part of the chocolate chip cookie, the chocolate chips or the cookie that surrounds it. You don't eat a chocolate chip cookie by taking the chips out and popping them in your mouth.
That's not a sandwich.
It's all one bite.
Okay, fine. I thought that was a softball question. The cream's the best part of an Oreo.
Okay, so more significantly, many Gen Xers are caught between caring for their aging parents while also raising their own children. This is not true for me. While I was raising my children, I was not having to care for my aging parents, and my children are now grown, and my aging parents are lovely people who are still able to take care of themselves for the most part. Now, I will admit that there are a lot of people that in my boat with parents the age of my parents and with children the age of my children, they may have very well had to deal with aging parents while raising their kids at the same time. But I was fortunate enough to not be at a disadvantage when it came to that. But I do know, I know a lot of our clients that are around my age are dealing with both children and aging parents that cannot necessarily fully take care of themselves anymore. And part of the problem with that is, first of all, my wife and I, we had our kids really very young. We intentionally had our kids so that they would all be grown and out of the house before we turned 50. And like I said, we were also blessed with parents I was blessed with parents who are very healthy and well into their 80s and still healthy and able to live alone. On the other hand, while we were raising our kids, we did have to spend some time caring for my wife's mother. Being the extraordinarily unsupportive husband that I am, it was not very stressful for me at all, but it did very much stress out my wife because all of our children were at home at the time that she was also trying to care for her mother. So while I personally only have sort of tangential experience with it, I know people that have had experience with this, and it can be highly impactful. It can definitely be difficult.
Well, and it's talking about because you are sandwiched between those two situations of caring for your kids, caring for your parents, sometimes who gets forgotten? You. And so trying to have that focus on your priorities, your financial needs. And that's a conversation we have a lot of times with no matter what generation they're in, is making sure that you're not spending so much effort on taking care of your parents or your kids or your grandkids that you're not focusing on your situation because, and I'll tell people flat out, okay, is it worth paying for little Johnny's softball lessons and ballet classes for another kid or things like that if then y'all are going to run out of money and then your kids are going to have to turn around and help you out because then you're just passing it down and it's a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. So, obviously it's one of those things that sandwich generation court, how you protect your future while balancing those responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So retirement savings comes first.
Key. And I think for any generation, obviously that is a key element of looking out for yourself. It's not something that we necessarily, when we were both very young, just out of college, we both had jobs that had 401ks. It was around the time that, like, for instance, I know that the business that I was working for, they had just done away with their pension plan and switched over to a 401k at the time. So I think 401k back when I was first starting in the career workforce was kind of a new concept, newish anyway. So we both were fortunate early on to have 401ks provided as an option for us. But as we got older and as we had kids and as we had more expenses and so forth, we started prioritizing the money that was in our paycheck for things that we needed to spend the money on right then rather than actually putting it into our 401k. And there were even jobs that I had where I did not have 401k as an option for a while there. So we're now kind of staring down the barrel of that, we've got retirement age, at least, theoretically retirement age approaching closer to...
We're never letting you retire.
We're closer to retirement age now than we are to our youthful age for sure.
How does it feel?
It's really just starting to hit me that, like, for instance, when Katie and I a few years ago were learning about all of this stuff and all the different retirement plans and stuff, one of the things that you learn about is the fact that after somebody turns 50, once they're over age 50, they can start maximizing their retirement savings.
You can catch up.
By using the catch-up rules. Yeah.
Not the food ketchup condiment. We're talking about CATCH.
Although that is a question for, when use ketchup on what sandwiches is ketchup recommended in what sandwiches?
Burger, and that's all.
And that's it, really.
Burger, maybe some chicken.
No.
I would put chicken tenders in ketchup.
No. Honey mustard, barbecue sauce, buffalo sauce.
He just said no. he said,
like,
you're
wrong.
No,
you're wrong.
Anyway, but while we were learning about the ketchup idea for retirement planning, I was not over the age of 50. And then recently I was thinking about the fact that, my retirement savings were not necessarily where I wanted them to be. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm old enough to use the ketchup.
You got to catch up.
What this says is that you should prioritize those retirement savings. Kids, for instance, this says, I'm not sure I agree with this, but this says your kids can take out loans for college. You can't take out a loan for retirement. I'm not a huge fan of people going into debt to pay for their education.
Again, that's a very big personal preference because there's some people that are like, I'm not saving for my kids. Mm-hmm. They can get scholarships or they can, have to pay for it like I did.
Oh, yeah. Listen.
So it's a big divide.
We were very much a family that was all about our kids getting scholarships. We were not able to put away much more for our kids' college education than we were able to put away for our retirement. But I don't know that I'd recommend kids, especially not letting your kids take on that debt so early in their life to get
you need to make sure that it's an understanding of what they're taking on. And I had this conversation with my little cousin the other day is she was so stressed out about how she was going to pay it back. And I said, well, as long as you were going to school and actually going to use your degree to get a job that will allow you to then pay it back, it's an investment in yourself. So it's worth it because that's the means to get you to the point where you can get this education if there's no other options out there.
Yeah. I feel you there. I mean, I paid for my degree and I used it. I was hired here, I think, because of my degree. But at the same time, my dad took out a loan for me. And you're so young after you graduate high school. I didn't know. I was like, yeah, I'll deal with that in a few years. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And boy, Abby and I struggled our first few years of marriage just paying that off. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
And people who keep going back to school and don't really know what they want to do.
That stresses me out.
Which is hard when you're 18 years old and your parents are like, I was talking to a client the other day who's got an opportunity because of where he works for a 50% discount at certain schools. And so he has told his kids, I don't care if you don't want to go to this school or not. This is where I'm paying for you to go to undergrad. If you want to go somewhere else, you're on your own.
I love it.
And it's not glamorous because, of course, as 18, you're like, well, my best friend's going here and I want to go there. It's like, okay, but you have to look at at the expenses because especially when people have kids that are stacked on top of each other, hell, I'm sitting there thinking I got two that are going to have to like 2 vehicles, 2 colleges all at the same time. So that has definitely changed my plan of how I start preparing for that. You know, give them books now as soon as they're born so then they get scholarships and I don't pay for anything, right?
My wife went to school, heard across the hall from her in her first year dormitory, there was a girl who had a twin, and the twin went to a completely different school in a completely different state. I always found that very interesting because I would have thought like, oh, you're twins. Why aren't you at the same school? But she was like, oh, no, we wanted to go to different schools. Anyway.
Because they want to be individual.
Okay, so prioritize your retirement over your kids' college education. Also prioritize your retirement over your parents' long-term care. This one, it says this is a tougher decision. It may seem heartless, but it's necessary to avoid passing financial struggles down to your children. And quite honestly, again, this may just come from my own personal good fortune, but it's never occurred to me. And as a matter of fact, okay, let me finish that statement. It's never occurred to me that I would have to take on the financial burden of long-term care for my parents.
Yeah.
I have always been of the mindset that my own personal caring for myself when I get old will be my responsibility. My parents, if they needed care for themselves when they get old, it would be their responsibility, and it would not be a burden that I would take on to deal with their burden. But I guess there are people out there that do have to face down that burden. And
if their parents have not saved. And that's why if you come in and talk with us, we then talk about what if you have long-term care? What if you have health needs? Because there are some people that go, oh, I just want to spend it all. And it's like, yeah, but you do not know how long you're going to live. People are living so much longer now. Do you want to be a burden to your kids?
I will say that one of the things, that part of my particular take on this particular topic is probably the fact that we have talked to so many people about elder planning and how you could potentially pay for that long-term care if you're older and don't have any money. And there are options.
Yeah, and we've seen situations which are heartbreaking where one spouse uses all the funds and then the other one is left with nothing. Again, that is why it's so important that the next of kin, next generation, whoever it is that potentially would have that burden, you bring them into the conversation early on. And kind of give, because you, for the most part, you have a little bit of a runway where you see it's going to run out soon. If you're working with somebody who can help you kind of see, this is how long it's going to last. And I do that with a lot of our clients of, you know, your mom will be fine and the money will last till X point. Now that's staying within this dollar range. Every time it increases, it's going to be a little bit shorter. But I know, like talking with your wife, y'all were getting very close to her and her sister having to figure out who's footing the bill.
How is the stuff for them?
Which is hard because it's like, okay.
Well, especially when you've got a husband that's like, we're paying for what? Excuse me? No.
Well, and it's because it's one of those, it's the decision is y'all start footing the bill or mom passes away.
Yeah.
On top of dealing with grieving and caring, like that's hard.
There is this idea that basically if you secure, as part of the sandwich generation, part of my generation, Generation X, if you prioritize your own retirement, then you don't worry about passing that burden on to your children. If you have sufficient savings that you can make sure that your care is assured when you reach an age that you need it, then that's one less thing that your children have to worry about.
And let me just say, we're talking about the sandwich generation, which is Court's generation, but
Generation X.
Generation X. That doesn't mean that this is not going to flip and then eventually be mine and Cam's generation, the millennials.
Yeah.
Like it's going to keep going down. So
yeah, because like for instance, my kids are Gen Zers.
Yeah.
Potentially your generation will be stuck between Gen X and Gen Z at some point.
And so trying to decide how do we help out? Because it's the reality is also, for the most part, kids do not come off the payroll at 18. Kids, a lot of kids stay on the payroll for 25, 30. Kids are staying on the payroll a lot longer. And so that is that balance because it's like, oh, I want to help them get a down payment on a house or I want to help my parents out. And so every generation is always going to be stuck in that limbo, which is why it's important to always make sure you look at the whole picture and that you're aware of potential. Are you going to have to help your parents out? You're also aware of your kids. Are you going to have to help them out? But you're also aware of each other because it could be a situation where your parents are fine, but your spouse has a critical injury or an illness that then takes them out workforce earlier, and then they're not able to grow their retirement. And then it all comes back to you, one person.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things, which is key of financial planning. Do it often. adjust it, check it out. Do not avoid it.
Yeah.
Do not do it like we're taxes and everybody's like, it's tax season again. Y'all, it comes around every single year. Always.
Why would you say that?
I'm sorry.
I shuddered.
So ensuring your retirement is secure means your kids won't feel financially squeezed when you get older. So it's continuing that ripple effect. Mm-hmm. Instead of personally funding your parents' care, use their assets first. This helps maximize programs like Medicare, which require individuals to exhaust their own assets before coverage kicks in.
Medicaid,
excuse me.
yeah. But yes.
Medicare is another thing.
Right. That's everybody gets Medicare when they reach a certain age. Medicaid is based on your financial ability. And if you don't have assets, then you could potentially qualify for Medicaid.
But again, that's some pre-planning that your parents could start doing before they get to those years where it potentially could be an issue of having to exhaust assets.
Yeah, if your parent can qualify for Medicaid, then you certainly don't need to spend your own money on their long-term care. You get them qualified for Medicaid, so their long-term care is paid for, assuming that Medicaid is still around. Communication is key. This can be something that you are dealing with not only with your parents, but also with your children. I think we've sort of touched on that idea that you have to talk to your parents about this stuff and make sure that if they don't have a plan, that you start developing one for their eventual care needs. And then also that you're talking to your kids about what's going to be expected of them for their school. Like, for instance, if you were raised or if you're raising your kids in an environment where it's just expected that they're going to graduate from high school and go to college, then I think you have to have the conversation with them. How are you going to pay for it? Or how is it going to be paid for? Establishing those expectations, not necessarily, you don't need to burden them with that when they're 8 years old, but, you certainly want to have a conversation with them before they reach college age. If they get into college and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, great, congratulations, you got into college. How are you going to pay for that?
How are you going to pay?
It's too late at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it says on here, talking with your kids is easier than talking with your parents. No one likes to talk about that conversation on what's the plan, if something should happen, what do you want to do? And we did an episode on that, kind of how to start that conversation. But on two sides of this, you want to make sure they've got a plan. You want to make sure if something happens, you know where all the plans are placed, where their assets are, things like that, without being intrusive. But because you want to make sure, mom and dad, do I need to build into my plan to take care of y'all if something should happen, is how I phrase it a lot of times with people. But on the flip side, and it doesn't say this in here, but I have to keep always plugging this. If you are the sandwich generation or you're any generation, millennial, Gen Z, anything, do not bank that your parents are going to leave you bukus of money. Do not build that into your financial plan. Ever.
You can dream it, but do not hope it will.
Do not plan that it's going to come in, because if they need every single penny of that, or if they have a shift where they want to spend kids' inheritance, we did an episode on that recently. Mm-hmm. They want to spend it all, then do not build that into your plan.
Well, similarly, as parents, I hear people joke about this frequently, like, oh, yeah, our kid is going to be successful and going to pay for us to retire. Obviously, you can't count on that either. So
no,
I am curious, with you expecting, and you have kids and I have kids, where do you stand if you had to pick? Would you prefer to leave your kids money and just kind of save and live a little more frugally, or say, this is my money, I want to live freely now and spend it and enjoy the sunset years of my life? I know it's tricky.
Yeah.
Like, if you had to choose,
if I had to choose one or the other, we lived very frugally while our kids were growing up. We had a good span there of about 18 to 22 years where we were scrimping every dollar and dime to make sure that we could afford everything that we needed to afford for our children and for ourselves while our children were growing up. And so now we're kind of a mindset that, like, hey, the kids are out of the house.
Let's spend it, baby.
Let's enjoy some life. This is what we were gearing towards, so let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that balance that you want to make sure you're protected. But if you are planning to leave money for kids, I think it's, again, you structure a trust or you set up something where the kids are not just giving that money outright, because that's where we've talked about the money just goes away quickly. Yeah. So parents may struggle with this shift in roles, but it's critical to know what they have saved, where is it, what are their plans for the future, and who they trust as their financial advisor.
Right. It's sort of an interesting dynamic with Katie. I know certainly with you, it's very simple to know who your dad trusts as his financial advisor. I also know where my parents' assets are. I've had conversations with them, being in the industry and also being an estate planning attorney for so long. I've had frank conversations with my parents about this stuff, but it's not necessarily necessarily easy for everyone to do. Parents may be reluctant to share the information with you. So at an absolute minimum, you've just got to establish, okay, look, I don't have to know what your plan is just so long as you've got one.
Yeah. And I just know who's in charge. So it's not you're in the middle of grieving and then it's like, oh, you're who your parents designated as being in charge. You have to work together with your sister or whoever it is.
Insurance is key under the circumstances for not only for your parents, something like long-term care insurance, potentially life insurance. Life insurance can serve several purposes. It can not only serve a purpose of providing for someone's ability to care for themselves if a spouse passes away. It can also potentially help pay for taxes if an estate is taxed significantly because of assets. It can also help plan for your children and or your grandchildren. If you pass away and you do want to leave something and you have life insurance, then that can obviously be a boon to them. In addition to life insurance, there's also disability or long-term care insurance. Those are two different things, but those are both keys.
Insurance is so broad that all I have to say with this is not everything is right for every person. You really have to individualize what's the best fit for you because there's so many ins and outs on the different long-term care policies, whole life insurance versus term insurance. And so don't just willy-nilly go and get insurance policies without talking to somebody and see what's right for you.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I giggled a little bit at that because I've never known anybody to just go out and start buying insurance policies. But wouldn't it be funny if somebody did? If you were like, why do you have so many insurance policies?
But some people...
I just went out and willy-nilly bought some insurance.
It's not... What is that? What is the movie where the guy has to spend like millions of dollars?
Oh, we've talked about that.
Millions.
Millions.
That's a great way to spin that, right?
Yeah.
Would that be within the guidelines?
I don't think it was because that was then a future benefit.
Yeah.
He had to,
you could not have anything. You could not have anything to show for the money you spent.
Yeah, he would have something to show for that.
So, like for instance, he spent money on a really, really rare stamp, and they were like, "Oh, that's a collectible stamp. That's worth a lot of money." And he used it to mail because he couldn't go out and buy like an expensive Picasso and use it as firewood, but a stamp. As long as he was using it for what it was intended, whether or not it was highly valuable or not, it didn't break the rules.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. Obviously, in terms of being able to assist your parents, being able to help them with Social Security and Medicare when it comes time for them to apply for and receive those things or sign up for and receive those things, that can be very helpful.
I love how it says, become a Social Security and Medicare expert.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid that because that is
just
really,
overnight.
really
it's so
hard.
easy.
Yeah.
Get a partner.
Yeah.
We even outsource that. We've got somebody who knows the ins and outs of Social Security and Medicare, but do not try and tackle this on your own. Get a partner who knows the ins and outs, but also it says on here, misinformation is rampant. It's okay because especially these commercials, things like that. And when you hit a certain age, you will be attacked with those different pieces of mail, emails, things like that. They're going to make it sound great and it's crap.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Obviously, that's key. Some of your family and friends may know something about it, but also there is an industry that is dedicated to providing this kind of assistance. And obviously we're in it. So
yeah, we're in it. And that's a lot of people don't know what to ask. And so we'll have somebody who says, oh, I need to talk to y'all about elder care. Or I need to talk to y'all about elder law or my parents. And we then can kind of help weed out what is it that we can actually help with? Are you talking more estate planning stuff? Are you talking financial stuff? And then within our wheelhouse, we can kind of get you to the right person to help you. Yeah. But at least just ask the question, even if you're not sure if you're in the right place.
So money strategies. I think we've kind of touched really on all of this, but the idea is you've got to have these conversations. So open communication is key. Make sure your parents have a strategy for how they're going to care for themselves later in life. Mm-hmm. Make sure your children understand what's going to be expected of them as they get older. And you establish like, okay, look, if you're one of those people that's like, listen, when my child turns 18, they can go to college or not, but they're no longer on my payroll, then you need to make sure your child knows that.
Yeah.
Where is the funding going to come from for your parents' care, for your children's college, and for their growth after graduation from high school? Do you have a veteran parent? Are they taking advantage of veterans' benefits? Do your parents have investments? Have you established any sort of investment accounts for your children? that can helpful for them in terms of not only like a 529 plan for paying for education expenses, but also just an investment account that maybe has been building and growing as they've been growing up. And then it'll be there for them to access if they need something for like a down payment for a house or something like that.
Listening to some of these episodes we've talked about recently, because it talks about tax benefits. And we did that whole episode about buying your aging parents' home and really deciding what's in the best interest of all parties involved with the house. So again, everybody's situation is very specific and individualized. So it's okay to ask for help on like what's the best strategy to handle all this. And again, don't go willy-nilly selling houses or doing different things like that. Like take some time to really put a plan together.
Now, let me ask you this, Katie, because the last thing on this list, I don't understand this. And I'm wondering if was this a mistype?
Yeah, there should be a T in that.
Okay. Okay. Because it says prioritize the budge. I was like, what the heck is the budge?
Isn't that a term you Gen Xers use, is the budge?
I'm glad it's not missing an L. Yeah.
Prioritize the bulge.
So
you said it.
Prioritize the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
This is kind of when you think about you're on an airplane, first put your mask on before helping others. Whatever generation you're in, you're sandwiched between a generation. That's the reality. So whatever life situation you're in, it's okay to prioritize yourself and then take care of everybody else. And I tell people that all the time is, look, it's not as simple as, oh, we got to hurry up and put all this money aside for retirement. Where are you in your life cycle? What are your priorities? Are you wanting to take care of kids? Do you have young kids that you want to be setting aside money for family vacations, things like that? Well, it's a balance. Make sure you're getting the match in your 401k plans, but also saving money for your now. Because when you look at, if you're 35 years old, retirement is further away than your kids going to college or your kids' youth years at home wanting to go to Disney World with you. So what makes the most sense? The shorter time period is the one to start saving for. That doesn't mean don't save it all for retirement. It's just that balanced approach. So with this, it's being aware of all the different facets, knowing what's going on with your parents, knowing what's going on with your kids, but also knowing what's going on with you, and really, again, every year kind of addressing your personal financial situation and seeing what needs to be adjusted. So this is the sandwich generation game.
If you're part of a generation that isn't sandwiched between two other generations, you've probably got bigger problems because we're talking like end of the world stuff there.
Yeah. You want to be sandwiched.
End of the human race kind of things that we don't want to be thinking about. So you definitely have a generation that's coming before you and one that's coming after you. So
and it's depending on your family setup. It could be split between multiple generations if there's lots of blended families out there, and lots of families that aren't blended but may have a kid that's 20 years old and one that's one. And so you've got that big dynamic to kind of adjust and balance out. But this episode, a lot of it you've heard us say before. It's really just kind of, I'll bullseye it right now. This is particularly, we're talking about Court's generation, but it could be any generation, and really just awareness. If you haven't picked up, the secret to your finances is being aware of them, not just being tunnel vision on, I've just got to get to retirement, or I've just got to get to this point. I got to get to the next point. You've got to step outside of it and look at the big picture every so often and really make sure. And a lot of times those people are married to each other. The one that's just focused on the next little milestone, and then one that's focused on the big picture. And they usually get married to each other, and that ensue cause some fights because it's like, oh, we're not on the same page. Talk to your parents, talk to your kids, get a plan, get your partners. Don't put your head in the sand. Do it.
Communication is key. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, there's the closing bell. You've made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bullcast Podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast beamed directly to your device every single Thursday at noon. If you'd like to find out more about Cortland, Katie, Cameron, or Nicole, please feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got pictures up there. We've got bios. We've got a place where you can drop a comment or suggest a topic you'd like to hear us talk more about. And hey, I mentioned pictures. If you like pictures, we do have an Instagram handle. That Instagram handle is @BullcastPodcast, and we also have an X handle, which is @BullcastPodcast as well. Finally, we have a Facebook page, which is Bullcast the Podcast. We mentioned that we work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. If you would like to find out more about Pickler Wealth Advisors, find out about what we do, find out about what we can do for you, find out about our amazing team, and find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have given you everything you need to go go forth and age and
Eat sandwiches, right?
yeah, eat some sandwiches. For now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
I'm Cam.
And we're done.